Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for taking your valuable time to join us for this webinar. Sure, up to this point, we've sort of walked through the storm. We've got together as communities. We've become neighborhood watchers. We've stood in lines to get groceries. We've helped clean up our neighborhoods, and now we enter the rebuilding phase. As you all know or might not know, the forum for this meeting is the main insurer that's going to pick up the bulk of the rebuilding and the claims in respect of the civil unrest and the looting. SASRIA, I'm not going to go into too much detail there and steal Dave's thunder, but we're very fortunate to have Dave Gould with us. I'll just go ahead and introduce him with a little bit of a bio. Dave is a serial insurance entrepreneur, having founded VUM 14 years ago after 15 years of heading up a national broker firm that he also started. He's married to Sam and they have two daughters, Brittany and Cara. He has run Comrades to Oceans, paddled doozies and many other races, and is always up for a challenge. Lives close to the ocean, has a passion for surfing, fishing and diving, and just basically loves all sports. He is active in his church and is committed to mentoring young entrepreneurs as they build their businesses. So welcome, Dave. Thank you very much for your valuable time. We know you're a very, very busy man. Thank you for coming on board and educating and enlightening us. And I think a good place to start is, what is SASRIA? Who is SASRIA? And let's go from there.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, as you say, I'm up for a challenge. And earlier on, Chris and I had a chat, and he tried to lay down a challenge for that I do the Roof of Africa with him next year. But I said on condition he'd do Comrades with me next year, and the challenge sort of fizzled out there. So yeah, but Chris, yeah, thanks for having me on, and to guys at Quattro. I really appreciate you setting this up, and I think it's hopefully going to be valuable to the guys that are listening in. I really sort of want to frame. I'll explain who SASRIA is and how it's constituted and what they do, but also want to hopefully leave with you with a message of hope. With lots of opportunities that are going to flow from this. So I think that's framing both. It's not just SASRIA's response, but what's our response, to the riots and strikes that we saw, the looting we saw last week. I'll start with SASRIA though, and just explain who they are. It was constituted in around about 1976. It's a state-owned company. It's a fully fledged insurance company, so it's party to all the regulations that we are as what we call private insurers. Because the rest of insurers out there are obviously owned by private individual and entities, and SASRIA is it's an SOC and state-owned company now. It's amazingly, I've dealt with a lot of SOEs and SOCs, and yeah, as we all know, they're not all that efficient at anything, but SASRIA surprisingly is. It's a great company. I've dealt with them at all levels, and really efficient. I find that they're well-meaning, they're well-capitalized, which is important. I'll come to that just now, what that means to us. But yeah, a good business. It's an insurance company. It's fully fledged. It's the only company in South Africa that's actually allowed to cover political right and strikes anyway. So even if us as the other general insurers wanted to cover political right, we're not able to. It's a legal legislation. So SASRIA are the only entity that does that, and that's all they do. So yeah, I think, does that frame enough of who they are, Chris? Do you think people would understand?
Absolutely. I just think obviously on the back of that, Dave, and possibly the next question that would come to the fore would be, okay, let's now. We haven't seen such devastation in this country for a very long time, and I do speak under correction here, but I think the last major SASRIA claim or incident was 1994. But I think this is of a major. A larger catastrophe, and I suppose the question from a lot of people will be, how big are the coffers? Have SASRIA got the funds to facilitate all the claims that are going to be coming through in abundance? How big is their reinsurance treaties? Who are they with? I just think if you could elaborate on that a bit for us, Dave.
Yeah, Chris, it's a great question, because the last really big sort of nationwide riot and strike event was 94, so 93, 94, before the elections. And that did dent SASRIA's coffers. Since then, they've really capitalized well. Just so you know, when I say capitalize it. It's come from insurance premium. So although it's a state-owned entity, the state has actually not funded them at all since inception, which is awesome. It's a real feather in their cap. It's all funded by premiums, and the premiums are even though they are monopoly, the premiums are valid and they commensurate with the risk. But in terms of reserves, currently the balance sheet is about 9.5 billion rand on the balance sheet. I think roughly 2.5 in cash and around about 6 in assets. 7 in assets. Somewhere between 9 and 9.5 billion. Now, obviously, they don't want to go and spend all of that money and have to sort of liquidate a lot of the assets. But we still haven't learned. We still haven't really worked out what the real quantum of this event is. It feels like it's landing somewhere between 15 and 20 billion total damages and losses. We don't know yet how much of that is insured. My estimate would be around about 60%. So we're possibly looking around about between 8 and 12 billion rands worth of SASRIA claims. Again, over the next couple of weeks, we'll have a tighter number there. Within that, there's an element of reinsurance, as you said, Chris. It's not a big program, but it should cover, I would guesstimate, somewhere between 15 and 30% of the losses, depending on the treaties. And those are with all your big reinsurers, Swiss Re, Munich, Hanover. So I think that already mitigates some of the losses, or the capital that SASRIA requires, rather. In the absence of all of that, the taxpayers would need to fund it. The balance would have to. It gets underpinned by government, and government actually underwrites at the end of the day, are the underwriters, being the shareholders. So if there's no money left, unfortunately it'll be tapped in. But I think none of us would sort of argue that it's going to a real cause. So we're all confident. That they're capable from a financial point of view, okay, and a balance sheet point of view of fixing what's broken. But from a capacity point of view, that's we can chat about that if you'd like me to.
Guys, just to all the attendees, Roxanne will be emailing the link out to our YouTube page. This is a recorded webinar, and it will be available there. I have also posted in the chat. If you could just please write any questions that you might want to pose to Dave in the chat room. I do believe we're going to get a bit of duplication, so I'll just filter it, from that point of view. But Dave, I think then the next pertinent question that has been coming up from a lot of people is, we believe that the insurers have been mandated with PEN to submit claims and work on claims up to 50,000 rand. Do you believe that they're going to be further mandated on a bigger scale, or do you think it's going to sort of pan out where at that, and everything's still going to have to go through SASRIA? Just obviously from a quantum point of view, has SASRIA got the capacity? From an assessor's point of view, do you think they're going to outsource assessing, bring assessors in from overseas, possibly, maybe short circuit the assessment process? What's your views on that, Dave?
Chris, I think that's all playing out in the market at the moment. I think at the very least, SASRIA has got a commitment to know that their capacity is not what it should be in this circumstance. Now, to put that into context, there's no insurer in South Africa that would be able to process these claims efficiently and to the expectation of clients in the short period. This is a massive event. It's a massive single event. It all happened within a week. It's widespread. It's got various elements to it. There's obviously fire, mainly there's looting, which is, a consequence. And there's business interruption, which are very tricky in claims to quantify. Saying that, there already is some mandate being given to the insurers. There's, as you said, 50,000. There's a mandate of up to 1 million rand claims where assessments or loss adjusters aren't necessary at this stage. I believe those mandates are going to expand as the realization that the capacity within SASRIA isn't there to process and get these claims on the ground, off the ground. Now, what's important is there's essentially two elements to these claims. Largely, there's what we call the fire element, which is the damage to the buildings and the looting of the stock. Okay, and then you get the business interruption element. Okay, not everyone has that cover, to be honest, but a lot of the big entities have that cover. Now, there's a massive incentive for SASRIA to process the fire element of the cover. because if they don't, it increases the business interruption element, because those businesses have further interruption then. They're out of business for longer. They're going to have a bigger claim against SASRIA, okay, if that makes sense. So there's every incentive to make sure the fire element, as I said, which is the looting, that, you know, fixing the buildings, making them back up to where they should be. But yeah, they're employing more people. I know there's a real commitment from the general insurers to assist wherever we can. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if we start throwing capacity into SASRIA from the other insurers as well, just from an operational admin point of view.
100%. Dave, just a question that's coming through quite thick and fast here. How do we claim for stock loss with us not being able to access our facilities? And I'm going to take it that this facility has not been affected by the looting / riots. So it's unaffected, but now the access was, they could not gain access to their properties. How would that be affected as far as a stock loss and obviously a business interruption point of view?
Okay, so if I understand the question, there's been a loss of stock because of the looting.
Correct.
And is the question? I'm just going to look at the question. Is it?
It's from John Brotus. I think we touched on this earlier. The stock loss possibly from deterioration. So they could not get onto their premises. So the stock deteriorated, but they couldn't get onto their premises not because their premises was looted, but because of the prevention of access. So there was no material damage to their premises as such. If you could maybe just elaborate on the answer there for us.
Okay, that's a good point. So the stock deteriorated because they couldn't go and recover it, and it couldn't be attended to. Okay. Correct. So that definitely, SASRIA have informed us very clearly that all losses that are essentially a bit of consequential, but relative or relevant to the riots and strikes from last week are going to be covered. So even in that case, any deterioration of stock in the period because they couldn't attend to it would be covered under SASRIA. Definitely, they're going to be very open with that. They're not going to try and dispute whether it's a SASRIA claim or whether it's potential consequential loss claim, or if it's even a looting. So looting's an interesting one, and you know, it doesn't quite answer the question, but I think it'll answer others. Is that looting is essentially a criminal theft, okay, and you normally wouldn't be covered for something like that under SASRIA because it's a criminal action. It's not necessarily political action. In this case, it was so hard to sort of determine which were the two. Was it a political action? Was it outright criminality? SASRIA very honorably come out and said, look, we deem it to be mainly a political, at the very least, trying to undermine the social fabric of our society, and we're going to treat all claims as SASRIA claims. And that's important, guys, because if looting was treated as theft, you'd be covered potentially under your underlying policy, but the theft limits are much lower and there's excesses that apply. With SASRIA, your theft limits are much higher and there's no excesses that apply. So it's a big benefit that the looting side of it is treated under SASRIA and not under normal insurance. I hope I think that answers most of that question, Chris.
There are questions come through here from Yolanda. Please clarify, will only 15% of claims be covered?
No.
My knowledge are there. Okay,
no, I don't quite know. No, 100% of claims. Up to the limits that you got on your insurance policies, you know. And again, I'm really just assuming here that people have got insurance, SASRIA cover. Now, something I didn't quite explain properly is that SASRIA attaches to your normal policy. Okay, and it's not automatic attachment, but I would say 90% plus of the time, SASRIA is in your insurance policies. If it's not, and it should be there, please speak to your brokers. You know, hopefully you've got a good broker like Quattro that makes sure it's there, but it should be there. The business interruption, not always necessary, so you'd have to have that extension, but at least the fire side of it, which would cover the looting and the damage.
And that is the basic cover, Dave. So SASRIA, my understanding is that the extensions are not going to be entertained, but only the basic cover, like under the fire section. Is that our understanding?
Correct, Chris. And at the end of that's the extension you want. It's the fire is the damage to the buildings and the fittings and all of the damage that we've seen in the looting, plus the loss of stock because of the looting. The business interruption is a separate net, and that's obviously you need to have that as a specific separate cover. And that would then cover the loss of profits or loss of gross profit or loss of rental if you're a landlord, because of the fact that you can't be trading at the moment. Yeah. The business interruption gets a bit technical, and that's perhaps, it's another webinar for another day. I'll try and touch on as much as I can, but it gets fairly technical.
You just quickly on the business interruption, Dave, do you think that obviously the insurers will possibly call for financials of the company when they put in their business interruption claim? Do you think of what's happened with COVID and 2020 not being the best trading year, that we could possibly go back and they would look at possibly 3 years financials from that point of view when they're entertaining a business interruption claim?
That's an excellent question, Chris. Is it one of yours or one of the panels?
It's one of the panels.
Oh, awesome. Great panel. Yeah. So, normally it's only 12 months back, so SASRIA normally takes business interruption on a 12-month basis. In this case, as you say, the last 12 months are really not a great representation of what that business can perform at. Saying that, it doesn't mean, because of COVID, the potential for business to perform well over this time is also muted. So it's unlikely they would use, for example, 2019 financials. But what we're really trying to push for in industry, and I think a fair solution would be the last 24-month average. I think it's taking a decent trading year into account, it's taking COVID into account, and hopefully we can land on 24 months averages. Those we haven't had confirmation from SASRIA how they're going to treat that. We haven't had a precedent on it yet, Chris. I think that would be the fairest. Of course, 3 years would be perhaps a little bit even fairer. But if we can land on a 24-month, 12 wouldn't be necessarily fair enough, I don't think, because of the COVID knocks. Yeah. But absolutely, you have to produce your financials. Your question is very valid. You can't just say, I think I was going to be earning 10 million, where, you've got to produce all the financials. I think what's going to be a little bit interesting on this one is that because SASRIA is a SOC, okay, they've got a great in with SARS. So I don't think they're going to just take your financials that you produce, even if they're audited. I think they're going to verify them against your SARS financials. So if you've understated income on SARS, you're going to have a problem in your business interruption claim. Just some speculation from me, just something to think about. Yeah.
All right.
Well, they need wobbly knees at the moment. They're knocking knees. No one understates income to SARS. I'm just. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it was just. Yeah.
What happens if there is no looting, but the business was unable to trade because of restrictions by authorities to the premises to trade? Can we still claim under business interruption for loss of income?
No, unfortunately, under SASRIA, there isn't a loss of access extension as there is under your normal business, under your normal policy. Your normal policy would most likely have a loss of access and a loss of amenities. You lose water and lights. But with SASRIA, no, they don't, Chris. So in that case, that loss during that week of access, you won't have a claim.
Okay. Dave, is there any indication on how long payouts from SASRIA will take? Just on that, I did see correspondence from a large insurer, and they are estimating within 3 weeks they should be able to sort it out. Would you agree with that statement? Or
I definitely. Claims is going to start. I mean, they're already starting to get pushed through now. It's basically who gets to the front of the queue first and who's able to get all the information together quickly. So please, guys, just if you have been affected by this, get your information. Don't treat it as a hassle. If you get asked for a piece of paper or a document, supply it immediately. Don't, you're just going to fall to the back of the queue if you don't. But it's going to be a couple of months. So it's not a week thing. This is a good few months. And obviously, the bigger the claim, where there's big lot. I mean, some of those factories and the big mass mart stores like what's the big one, Macro. I mean, that's a different level. But I'd say the smaller stuff, because the insurers, okay, the general insurers actually administer most of the claim. Okay, when I say most, there's certain elements that they don't, and they need approval all the time. But the general insurers do a lot of the documentation and paperwork. Okay? So because of that, it would be speeded up quickly. And we're already getting claims in ourselves, So, I wish I could say it's weeks, but I think it's months now.
100%. Does business interruption through SASRIA only get considered if you have BR on your normal insurance? You answer that one, Dave.
Chris, speak a little bit into the mic. I missed
sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Does business interruption through SASRIA only get considered if you have business interruption on your normal insurance? Obviously, that being the underlying policy.
So that's an interesting one. There's an anomaly there because SASRIA have a specific business interruption standalone policy, okay? But it's got to follow a fire event. And you've only going to, I'm going to say it's complex, but I'm going to say you need to have fire cover and your normal policy because you can't have business interruption without fire, and you have that as an attachment. That standalone business interruption cover from SASRIA, it doesn't make a lot of sense what they're proposing. It's not likely that a client would have that though. It's fairly unlikely. The most likely is they're going to have the covers attached to their business insurance policy.
Okay. Here's quite a good one, Dave. What happens in the case of accidental underinsurance? I'm assuming they're alluding to average there being applicable. Is your SASRIA claim limit restricted to the value linked to your insurance? And can you provide photos and receipts for higher than the value stated? Will there be a penalty for underinsurance?
So accidental underinsurance, that's an interesting one. I don't know what that means and who would judge what accidental is. I think it'll be quite hard to prove that it was accidental in some way. It's going to be a tricky one. Average is going to be applied against these claims. I'll say you straight up, So, I just hope your cover's up to date. If you've got a good broker once a year, they would be touching base, to make sure that your fire cover is and your business interruption is relevant. The right figures are in there. But I think under the circumstances, it might be hard to justify that there was some accidental, underinsurance, unless it's very obvious that, you've got a 10 million rand building and there's a note missing somewhere, But other than that, no, I'm afraid you're going to have a little bit of a knock. Yeah.
Okay, but for all intents and purposes, average will be applicable.
Average will be applicable, and it's really good time for everyone just to revisit their insurance policies. Make sure your broker really is sharp. If they're not, go to Quattro and make sure that they're really applying the right sum insured. Yes, you save a bit of premium by underinsuring, but it's going to hit you when you need it most, which is now.
Absolutely. Okay, Dave, here's a nice one from the elephant in the room. From your own personal perspective, while we rebuild and get back to business as usual, what do you personally think of the looters?
Chris, I think, we've all got our personal viewpoints on the looters. I personally got a very dim view of them. But I've also personally got a very dim view of humans anyway. I don't feel that humans are great at doing much anyway. I know this is fairly extreme, and I'm not condoning their behavior in any way, but, we all kind of break laws and things. We have a few beers and drink and, as I say, dodge the tax man every now and then. And there's understandable anger. I get all that. Okay. And I'll come to what I feel you should do about that now. But Chris, there's consequences to everything. I'm saying humans are faulty, It's only one perfect human. That was Jesus. The rest of us really, it's just scales of faultiness, and we're all very close in that. I mean, there's not a huge difference between Hitler and Madame Teresa in terms of perfection, In terms of judging them, now this is what's important. I want to learn. I mean, we've all been very judgmental, obviously, and we can kind of justify that and say we're rightly judging. And I've personally, and I'm sure a lot of you been real anger against those people that were arriving in really smart cars and loading up stock. I think we can sort of almost accept or understand or justify the really poor people doing it. So there's anger there. But guys, I mean, being judgmental really, it's like drinking poison and hoping other people die. It doesn't help. Fortunately, God judges. He'll do that for us. Humans are really poor judges. I mean, it's very emotional. I mean, look how long it takes too. Look at the Zondo Commission. I mean, look how long that judgments take. So please remove any. I'm going to give all of you 2 weeks maximum to just remove any anger you've got. If you still got it, then I'll have a dim view of your intelligence. Because what it's going to do is really just just limit you to looking at opportunities. If you're going to keep judging, being angry with these looters, please guys, stop it.
100%. Dave, another question that's coming up quite frequently is, should damaged property be kept for the SASRIA assessors at any point, or do you think videos and photos of the damage would suffice, and can people start cleaning up their premises as they rebuild?
A great question. Absolutely, photos and that. No, you take photos as much as you can, put them in a nice folder. You don't need to keep the stock. SASRIA won't have anything to do with. They won't be able to do anything with it. They won't. They won't want that stuff. Generally speaking. Obviously, please guys, work together with us. I mean, if you've got stock that's really in top condition, it's saleable. Don't put it into a SASRIA claim. Put it into your shops again.
100%.
If it's damaged, dispose of it. Take photos, dispose.
100%. Dave, could you just touch on the applicable excess in a SASRIA claim under the fire section, material damage?
There isn't one under material damage. No, there isn't an excess of material damage. There's one excess. I can't even think where it applies now, but it's not a big one, and it's maybe there's another.
I think that's the contractor's works.
That's it. Contractors all risk. Contract, that's where it is. It's nowhere else. There's not even in business interruption actually. So it's a really great cover.
Okay, super. Let's have a look if there's any other questions coming through here. I'm one of the many people who lost the contents of our storage unit due to looting and fire damage. There is some confusion as to the value of items to be claimed. Where household goods were stored in the unit, we have been advised to get online quotes for the replacement cost. Will SASRIA pay out the replacement cost of new furniture for used? If not, how do we obtain the value of used items?
Yeah, the storage units are interesting. The storage units actually have cover. That's part of, well, not speaking on behalf of all of them, but I know the really good ones have a decent amount of cover within your unit. And you may even have that cover yourself under your personal policy, So that's a good thing. But to answer that question, new for old on furniture. I mean, it's always new for old. So, old furniture, whatever similar make model is, you would get new for old cover. If that furniture is antique and worth, that's when it gets tricky, because you'd need to value pre-damage valuation certificates, But second-hand furniture, you can go get a new couch. There's not a lot of second-hand furniture floating around. It's not a lot of new at the moment either. But when it starts coming through, then you'd get new furniture to replace.
100%. Guys, I just want to mention to all the attendees that the answers that Dave and myself are providing is purely demonstrative, and please don't see it as advice. Just need to mention that. Dave, the next question here: can we claim business interruption if we cannot get supplies from suppliers that have been burnt down?
Okay, this is an interesting one, because your normal policy, there's a extension called suppliers, where your business interruption kicks in if you can't get supply from them. Okay. If you've got business interruption on SASRIA, I would definitely say that would apply, because you are being affected by the overall, let's call it riots. I'm not sure what we call, no one knows, even the president. Well, he's called it insurrection. Let's follow him and not dispute what he's calling it. But in terms of the insurrection, the consequences that your supplier can't supply, I would definitely say that's part of the business interruption period of interruption. Yeah, definitely. Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of SASRIA, but I'm sure they're going to be fair with that. Yeah.
Okay. Can we claim business interruption for orders we could not complete from the factories we could not enter?
Could we claim
business interruption for orders we could not complete from the factories we could not enter?
It's similar as the last question, but it's a more of not that was a supply problem. This is a sales problem. So you basically your sales are getting limited. So it's the same thing. I think SASRIA are going to be fair with that. It's interruption in business. It's justified. It's quantifiable, and I'm really sure they're going to be, they're going to be sympathetic towards that. Yeah. although their wording doesn't really dictate it, it's not. Suppliers and customers extensions aren't normally in the SASRIA business interruption section, although they are in your normal business one. But that doesn't cover political right, But I think they're going to be fair. This is a unique event, and they've told every bit of correspondence, and I've had 2 meetings with them. Everything I see from them is fairness. Let's build a country together. At the end of the day, this is not if this was a private insurance company, it might be a different viewpoint. This is a public insurance company. We own it, guys. We've paid it by premium, and if premiums aren't enough, then we're paying it by tax. So it's work together here. It's not work against.
100%. Dave, if stock was in transit on a courier company's floor to be delivered to chain stores was looted and the factory burnt down, can we claim from SASRIA?
For the stock that was in transit?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. 100%.
Yeah. It was burnt down. It was part of the strike, definitely. Yeah. What I'd like to do, Chris, if we've got 15 minutes, which I think we have, I'd like to spend that time on how we rebuild. SASRIA technical questions we can go on for days on that, and I'm not sure it helps all of the tenants here. I think it'll help them a lot more to focus on some opportunities for us.
100%.
Are you okay with that?
Absolutely, Dave.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The technical, I'm sure there's lots of technical questions. I'd suggest you refer them to your brokers, and again, how much wine am I getting for punting Quattro here, Chris?
Well, there's a lot of offers for whiskey here, so watch the space.
Yeah, man, if your broker's not looking after you, you know where to go. Yeah.
Just on that, Dave, and I'll give you the floor in a minute if you wouldn't mind. I mean, I've just, as you say, the restructuring of policies. There's huge opportunities for the broker networks and for clients now to revisit their insurance. Obviously, the dynamics of their businesses might have changed. By virtue of rebuilding the country, contractors are going to be inundated. There's huge VAT implications and tax implications for SARS. So yeah, I've made a couple of notes here just on the positives, and as well a nice one that I spoke to Gaz last night after he had a webinar, is that the international perception is that this happened because the rot is getting weeded out. So South Africa is held in high esteem, from an international investment point of view. So it's all positive, but I'll let you elaborate further on that, Dave.
Yeah, that's a good way to set it up, Chris, because I know this is really counterintuitive, based on what we've been through last week. I've never been so positive about this country, and certainly about the opportunities in KZN. If I was like 10 years younger with energy, I would be boots and all into shop fitting, into security, fire treatment systems, fire detection systems, construction, those kind of things. Obviously the rebuild, and I'll explain why. So SASRIA, as I said, it's got the capital, and we're talking somewhere between 8 and 12 billion rand that's going to be released, 80% of it into KZN. Okay. Now the difference, and I think we've all been a bit jaded or, sort of overwhelmed with all these billions that get stolen from the coffers. So when you speak a billion, it doesn't mean too much nowadays, but it's 1,000 million rand. And this money that's flowing through from SASRIA is getting managed by the private insurers. Okay. Now that's, yes, we may be called other things, but one thing we don't allow leakage. We've got a very tight and efficient method of fixing things, of distributing funds. So this 8 to 12 billion that's going to flow into our economy is going to flow into the right spaces. Okay. It's very different to sort of, let's say, government deciding there's some infrastructural spend of 10 billion, for example. Because as we know, I mean, if government puts let's say 1 billion rand into something, if you're lucky, you're going to get 500 million rands worth of value. The rest is in leakage, Might be facetious, and that's an average and generalist. I mean, sometimes you get maybe 800 million rands worth of value. Sometimes we've had no value. When 1 billion rands worth of SASRIA money flows through the system and gets to the end user to rebuild their factory or their shop or their home, there's very little leakage. Okay. So that's one really important thing to know. And that's where the opportunities again come in. Something else is that from insurers' point of view, we're not, things like BE are they're legislative, so we have to conform to them. We don't get tied up on them. Okay, I'm personally very against BE. I think it's disgusting. It's racist. It's hurt more than it's helped. It's my personal opinion. I don't, I'm too old and ugly to care what you think if it's wrong or right. But as insurers, okay, and certainly insurers with a heart, we get to do transformation differently. Okay, as this money spend happens, and it's a lot of money. I mean, as I say, R1 billion, 1,000 million. You can imagine just in the regional, in KZN, that's huge. We get to do the right things with it. And please, guys, if I can encourage you with something, let's do transformation by the heart. Okay, let's help with transformation by the heart, with our heart rather than with a piece of BE scorecard, a piece of paper. Okay, because all that leads to is cadre deployment and nepotism, and corruption and stuff like that. Because if we don't do that, we're going to have repeat events of what we saw last week. Okay. So as the opportunities flow, as you get business from this rebuild, and you're all going to get it. If you don't, then you perhaps need to move to Western Cape, But you're all from KZN, I would assume. There's going to be lots of opportunities in your businesses. You might have to pivot slightly. Please take advantage of those. But when you do it with the right heart, okay? Make sure if there's any profits you're earning, you give something to the NGOs that are helping. Make sure you're bringing young black entrepreneurs through as well, guys with trades and skills, so you can develop them. So we can we can lead government on this kind of stuff. Okay, and I think we showed last week that we lead government on a lot of things. Let's really use this as an opportunity to transform our society to make sure that we don't go through what we did last week. And the beauty of all this stuff is labor intensive. Construction is labor intensive industry. We can employ a lot of people through this if we do it right. So go for it, boots and all. Become a shop fitter, I don't know. Panels, tiling, painting, paving, tick, 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 everything. Go for it. Put money in, put heart in, put effort in, put your hope into it. Great opportunity, yeah.
100%. I just think on that, Dave, I've seen it firsthand now. I'm in the waterfall region, and as you know, our Moor watercrest was hit quite hard, and a lot of the pundits said, hey, this is 2 months before we see any movement. 4 of the anchor tenants are open. It's just bears testament to how resilient we are, South Africans. You can kick us, but you can't keep us down. So all we need to do is win the first test against the Lions on Saturday, and then that'll cap off a good week.
Yeah, the week has been better, but it's a relative term. After last week, anything's better. Yeah, but let's be better differently. I think that's the message I really want to leave. That we can't just allow this massive gap between rich and poor. This inequality gap. It's just way too wide. We've got to shorten that, and we can do it. We can. I think as KZN, in particular around Durban, we can be a shining example to the rest of the country. Using this money wisely. And I mean, I want to bring some black partners in, man, black African guys. And, they might not be sort of educated in finance. Let's do that. Let's help them, educate them, bring them in as partners, let them, learn and get some transformation. Let's get the real money into the right hands, not into those flipping politician pigs. Yeah.
100%. Okay.
I like politicians. Have you picked that up, or was I subtle there, Chris?
No, you were subtle. It's all good.
Was I subtle? Thanks. Yeah.
All right, Dave. I think the questions seem to have diminished. Just one last question. Maybe I can answer it if you wouldn't mind, Dave. On closing, the question is actually quite a pertinent one. Do we go through our insurance broker to claim through SASRIA, or do we claim through SASRIA directly? Please go through your broker. This is what they and we are trained to do. We have the relationships. The claims will be processed through your underlying policy, so it goes through your underlying insurer, which be it a Santam, a Mutual, Federal of the Worlds, etc. And just on that, I saw a snippet from Santam. Keep photos and videos, guys. Report to the SA Police Services. Get a case number. Support your stuff that you're claiming for with proof of purchases where you can. Do stock inventories as soon as possible. Get out the starting blocks. Let's get the claims through into the pipeline, and then they will be managed from your intermediary / broker level. If any of you guys need any assistance, my email address, you can email me if you've got any questions further to this after the webinar. It's Chris, Walters, WALTERS, @qfg.co.za, and I will respond to your emails, guys. I think that's about it. Dave, if there's anything else from your side, we can go and do some work.
Yeah, no, Chris, I think hopefully it was helpful, to people that attended. We can certainly set one or two, as the process unfolds, we can set one or two more of these up.
100%.
If the guys are up to it, and there'll be more information. I mean, we're only a week into this, so a lot of the stuff the answers I've given you are a little bit speculative, but based on some fairly good information, but they're not definitive. So as we expand on this, I don't want to get again too specific and too technical on each problem, but I think the generalizing helps. And I certainly want to see you guys the next time we have this in a few weeks' time, coming up with awesome stories of how you've partnered with a Black entrepreneur and you are now building you're building a business together. You've rebuilt the spa down the road, and you've shop fitted it, and you've put the latest security systems that can pick up a pimple on your nose and that kind of stuff, man. I want to hear those stories, eh?
Awesome, Dave. Well, Dave, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. As always, we do appreciate it, leaning on your knowledge. So it's not just old age and that grey beard. There's a lot of wisdom there, so to speak. Just to all the attendees, thank you guys for your time. We also appreciate your time, taking the time out of your busy days. Just to reiterate this, you will be emailed with a link. This is on YouTube. It has been a recorded webinar if you'd like to review it again. And then also, please, next Friday, we have a diversification and investment webinar on the 30th. Roxanne will also be emailing you the link to that for those of you that would like to attend that. Then on that note, thank you very much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you soon.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.